Hey, hello, Nick Digilio here. What's going on? Thank you for checking out my videos here at the YouTube channel. Subscribe, it's free. Tell your friends. I've got a podcast coming up, as I've been telling you. Second to third week in January. It is on the Radio Misfits Podcast Network. It'll officially be launched in late January, and you can subscribe and tell all your friends. And please listen; it's going to be great. I'm going to have great guests and great topics, and it'll be very much like my old radio show on WGN. And I really hope that this becomes a success, and I need you to do that. So check out Radio Misfits Podcast Network. Subscribe when it's available, and please listen. It'll be twice a week, 2 hours a show every week. So. And also Patreon. Patreon's a great place to check out videos that I share there, exclusive videos that no one can see except for people who become patrons. There's a donation tier there if you want to do that. You can $3, $9 a month, things like that. And as a result, you'll get free messages, exclusive messages from me. When we do some live stream stuff in the future, we'll do that. And you get videos, behind-the-scenes stories about certain radio stations and certain events that happened at those radio stations. Anyway, you got to be a patron to do that. So check out patreon.com/NickDShow. All right. Yesterday, I dropped a video here on my YouTube channel about Guillermo del Toro, the really talented Mexican director who has become quite popular, Oscar winner from a few years ago with The Shape of Water. Explores the world of mostly fantasy films, horror films. He's fascinated and he loves monsters and creatures and things like that. And he's been making movies for 20-something years, over 20-something years, and he's captured the imagination and the hearts of a lot of people. His latest movie is called Nightmare Alley, and I talked about his career yesterday, previewing the fact that I was going to see the movie, and I did. I saw it last night. And I personally think it might be the best movie he's ever made. Yeah, at least since The Devil's Backbone, which, was 20 years ago, which is my favorite Del Toro movie until I've seen this one. It's great. Nightmare Alley is great. Now, I saw a lot of people, they're not really advertising this. A lot of people don't know that this movie is in fact a remake. And a remake of a pretty popular film noir from 1947. But they're not really talking about this. I've seen, some of the stars of the movie being interviewed, and I've seen Guillermo del Toro being interviewed. And they've never really mentioned the original film. A couple of folks, and I think del Toro did, mention the original book. The original book was from 1946, and it was written by William Lindsay Gresham. And it was called Nightmare Alley, and it was about a drifter who also happens to be sort of a con man, a grifter himself, who joins up with a traveling carnival, complete with the sideshows and all of the acts and the stuff that goes along with being a sideshow traveling carnival. And the book did very well, and then a year later it was made into a movie. And this was not just like any sort of director that tackled the original Nightmare Alley back in 1947, but it was directed by Edmund Goulding, whose credits are amazing. He's worked with Garbo and Frederick March, Bette Davis many times, John Barrymore, Bogart, Douglas Fairbanks, Gable, Lombard. I mean, you name it, he's worked with them. He directed Dark Victory and Grand Hotel, Dawn Patrol, The Razor's Edge, the Constant Nymph. He also directed Night at the Opera, the Marx Brothers movie. So his movies are very vast, and he was a pretty legendary director at that time. So Edmund Goulding's original film version of it came out in 1947, and it starred Tyrone Power and Joan Blondell. And it was really, for its time, a very dark and relatively twisted film noir, and has gone down as a really loved movie that got great reviews when it came out, did really solid business, but was really sort of a challenging, very dark, very weird film noir. Now, I haven't seen the original, and in fact, I forgot that the original actually existed until about a month and a half ago when I realized, oh, wait a minute. There was a movie called Nightmare Alley years ago, a black and white film. Is that the same thing, or is Del Toro just using the same title? No, it is indeed a remake based on that book. But a lot of people aren't talking about it. This is a remake, and a great remake. And now, again, I have not seen the original 47 film since I was a kid, so it's been a long, long time. So it's available out there, and I'm going to find it, and I'm going to watch it at some point, probably this weekend. I'm definitely going to get it and watch it. But let's get back to Del Toro's movie. I fucking loved this movie. I mean, really, really loved it. And I went in, if you watch the video that I posted yesterday about Del Toro, I've always had some misgivings and some problems with his movies. I admire that he loves the horror genre so much and the fantasy genre, and especially his love of creatures and weirdness and monsters and stuff like that. And I like most of his movies. A couple of them I really love, but I've always had issues with them. But this one, it's odd because this one might be my favorite Guillermo del Toro movie of all time, and yet it doesn't have any of the outlandish, crazy creature fantasy stuff that he loves so much. That weird, unrealistic, crazy fantasy realm where the monsters exist, that's not in this movie at all. It's a film noir. It's a very stylish and over-the-top film noir, but there are no creatures in this movie. There are no Doug Jones weird monsters with eyes in their hands and stuff like that. Nothing like that at all. So maybe, real big fans of Del Toro are going to be disappointed by this because it's not, that crazy, fantastical, monster-filled world. It's not that. Extraordinary cast in this movie. Bradley Cooper is the lead. Listen, here's the cast. You got Bradley Cooper, you got Cate Blanchett, Toni Collette, you got Willem Dafoe, Richard Jenkins, Rooney Mara, you've got Ron Perlman, Mary Steenburgen, David Strathairn, one of my favorite actors of all time, Clifton Collins Jr., used to be known as Clifton Gonzalez back when he did 187. They're all in this movie. I mean, the cast is amazing. And the women in this movie, the three main female actors in this movie are three of my favorites and three of my crushes. Like, I just love these women. They're so beautiful and so good. So anyway, Bradley Cooper, at the beginning of the movie, there's you see Bradley Cooper dragging a dead body. He's in a house, a sort of a broken down ramshackle house, and he's got a cigarette in his mouth. And again, can I just say, the cigarette thing in the year 2021 is unbelievable. The amount of smoke, I don't know, I guess because for a long time, people were like, you shouldn't smoke in movies, and they were actually like, when the reasons for rating movies, whether they're R or PG or whatever, they would add whether or not there was smoking in movies. But I guess they don't give a shit anymore because the smoking is just, rampant in movies. And I'm an ex-smoker. Power of the Dog, the great Jane Campion movie, I was jonesing for a cigarette during that movie, and I haven't had a cigarette in 19 years. But suddenly, I've been jonesing for cigarettes while I've been going to movies. The Lucy and Desi movie, the Being the Ricardos, every scene in that movie someone is smoking. Same thing here. My God, the smoking in this movie. But again, this was the 40s. Much of this movie takes place in the sideshows in the traveling carnival world where people do a ton of drinking and a ton of smoking. But yeah, smoking has made a comeback in movies. I don't know. But I just, my God, there's been a lot of smoking in movies. Anyway, there's a lot of smoking and drinking in this film. But anyway, at the beginning of the movie, Bradley Cooper's character, for some reason that is not explained, it will be explained as you go on, but at the beginning of the movie, he's in this ramshackle house and he's dragging what appears to be a dead body wrapped up in a sheet and dropping it into a hole into this house that's in the middle of the floorboards, lighting a cigarette and dropping the match into the hole and setting the entire house on fire, and he walks away from it. Don't know why, don't know anything. Stranger. This drifter, this stranger, joins up with a traveling carnival led by Willem Dafoe, who is a barker and also runs the Geek Show, the sideshow. He runs the Geek Show. And the Geek is obviously the crazy, wild character that eats chickens and does all kinds of gross and crazy stuff, and is a feral-looking guy. People pay money on the sideshows at these carnivals, still do and did in the past, to look at the freak show. And part of the freak show was the geek, the crazy, feral dude who would eat chickens and do all kinds of crazy shit. Also part of the sideshow at this carnival, you got the bearded lady. You got the girl who can pass electricity through her body and take electric shocks. That's played by Rooney Mara. And her bodyguards are Ron Perlman, who's been in almost every Del Toro movie. He also doubles. He's not only her bodyguard and her friend, Rooney Mara's bodyguard and friend, but he is also the strong man who lifts the 1,000-pound weights. There is also the little person who plays the executioner in the act where Rooney Mara takes the electricity. So you've got the bearded lady, you've got the woman who was born a spider. So all of the sideshow acts, all of the geeks are there, and Bradley Cooper, the stranger, starts to be a helping hand. He puts up the tents, he helps out, and in return he gets meager pay. The movie takes place in the late 30s, starts out in the late 30s. He gets meager pay, a place to sleep, and he travels with this carnival. One of the people that works at the carnival is played by Cate Blanchett, and not Cate Blanchett, Toni Collette. Sorry, I got my ets, women with ets at the end, a little confused because they're both in this movie. Toni Collette, the wonderful, amazing Toni Collette. She plays Xena, who is the psychic, who does an act where she predicts things and is able to tell the future and tell secrets and stories about the crowd that's gathered in front of her stage on the sideshow. And of course, it's an act it's a con, it's a grifter act, and she works with her alcoholic husband, her old alcoholic husband, David Strathairn, and they've got this act together where they bilk people out of their money, and it's all an act, it's all fake. It's all verbal clues that are given. It's not. None of these people have any psychic abilities. It is all an act to pilfer the marks, of course, the marks, as they're known, as in the carnival world, in the wrestling world, they're known as marks. To believe that this woman is psychic and she can put them in touch with dead relatives and tell them about things in their future, but especially in their pasts and the ghosts around them and all that stuff. So Bradley Cooper becomes kind of involved with this couple and with Toni Collette and David Strathairn. Strathairn is this old alcoholic guy who's been around for a long time, and now it's all about the booze. He can barely function anymore. But he's got this book that has all these secrets to the act, all these secrets to the con job that he can do, how he can be a grifter and convince people that he's psychic and put them in touch with the dead people and do this act. So Bradley Cooper becomes very fascinated by this. He also has a romantic interest in the Rooney Mara electric character, and they begin sort of a romance that's under wraps. Willem Dafoe is the guy who runs it. They keep, going through geeks. The current geek is on the verge of death. They feed the geek alcohol and opium to keep him going, so that he keeps eating chickens and all kinds. They keep him in a cage. They keep the feral alcoholic geek chicken eater in a cage among the animals and all the other crap that's there. So that's basically the story. And then Cooper, something happens. I don't want to give anything away, but something happens at the carnival, and Bradley Cooper's character ends up leaving with Rooney Mara's character, and they go off together, and he's going to start his own act, taking the ideas and taking all of the wisdom and the notes that David Strathairn had in his book with him. And he becomes and then the movie opens up a couple of years later, and the second half of the film takes place in an entirely different world. It takes place in a very fancy world where Bradley Cooper and Rooney Mara have become this famous psychic act. And he draws the attention of this psychologist played by Cate Blanchett, this very rich psychologist, who puts him in touch with other rich people so that he can do his act to these rich people and make more money, and they can split it. So they become high-class grifters. Complications ensue. Bradley Cooper may or may not be, people may or may not know that he's not a psychic and that, in fact, he is a grifter and a con man and has no connection to the netherworld or ghosts or spirits in any way. And it is about them trying to keep that at bay, him trying to make as much money from these sort of crazy and sort of mysterious rich people played by Richard Jenkins and Mary Steenburgen, and this relationship that he has, this mysterious and very interesting relationship that he has with Cate Blanchette, who is sort of his partner in this con game, but also is a psychologist and is digging deep into Bradley Cooper's past to find out what makes him tick and to find out maybe this guy had a trauma in his early life that has led him to being what he is, this grifter, this guy who doesn't have an address, this guy who was bilking people and stealing ideas from other con men, and just thinking about the buck and conning people. It gets out of control, it gets out of hand, and really horrible things happen, which leads to, some complications that leads to a very incredible ending to the film. So that's what it's about. Bradley Cooper playing the drifter gets into this sideshow carnival. Complications ensue when he tries to be what he isn't. And there's a lot more going on inside Bradley Cooper's brain and mind. And that's what it kind of is about. What's going on in this guy's head? What secrets is he keeping? What secrets are he keeping from the world? And Cate Blanchette, this mysterious partner psychologist, is going to get to the bottom of it. And meanwhile, it's filled with great, crazy characters. As I mentioned, David Strathairn is amazing in this movie as the old alcoholic grifter psychic, the guy with the psychic show. Can't say enough about Toni Collette. Toni Collette as the woman who runs the 10 cents a bath booth and is married to David Strathairn's character, who has all of the miles all over her. She's funny and sexy and really, really good in it. Rooney Mara is wonderful, wonderfully sort of innocent girl who is new to the carnival trade, and her act is to, look as though she is, filled with electricity and is able to take giant volts of electricity through her body. And it's an interesting relationship between her and Bradley Cooper. Cate Blanchett is fantastic, sexy and mysterious and slightly evil and weird as the psychologist who becomes the partner and has a relationship with him. Ron Perlman is great as the strongman bodyguard. Ron Perlman, adding the Ron Perlman world to it. Mary Steenburgen has a small but incredible part as a woman who is desperate to try and be in contact with her dead son. And is one of the rich people that Cooper is bilking out of her money to make it seem like he can actually put her in touch with her son. And Mary Steenburgen's great in it. Richard Jenkins, who obviously has been in, many Del Toro movies, is again fantastic as this incredibly rich guy. But on top of that, I do want to mention the technical aspect of this movie. Let me just say this: there are homages to a lot of movies, a lot of older movies and other movies in Nightmare Alley. And it's not new to Del Toro. Del Toro, loves old horror movies. He loves science fiction movies and sci-fi movies and fantasies and stuff like that. And he often throws in little Easter eggs or little homages to it. But there is a blatant, and there's a ton of that in this movie, a ton of it. I mean, obviously it's a remake of a 1947 noir movie, so noir stuff is every. I mean, this is a film noir. This is a 21st century film noir, filtered through the brilliant eye of Del Toro and his incredible technical staff. It's a big, beautiful, crazy, dark, R-rated, violent, twisted film noir. But there are homages to other ones. And one of my favorites in the entire movie, and there are a lot of them, but my favorite in the entire movie is when Bradley Cooper's character is summoned to meet Richard Jenkins, who plays this billionaire rich guy who wants to be put in touch with his dead wife. He is taken to this guy's palatial, huge estate. And as he pulls up to this estate, as they drive into the building, when he walks into the building and walks up to the reception area where he is frisked and his his watch and his ring and things like that are taken from him before he can go in and meet Richard Jenkins. The drive up to the building and the reception area in the hallway is taken directly from In the Mouth of Madness. Directly from In the Mouth of Madness. The shots are exactly the same. The building looks exactly the same as the insane asylum from John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness. The shot of the car pulling up to that Richard Jenkins place is exactly the same shot. I mean, it is a full-on, almost shot-for-shot tribute to John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness. And, of course, Del Toro did it on purpose. That's not by a coincidence. And that hallway where he walks into the reception area, it is the reception area from the insane asylum in the Mouth of Madness. And I just sat there and went, I wanted to tell somebody in the theater, hey, that's essentially the same exact set. This is a tribute to In the Mouth of Madness. How cool is Del Toro for throwing in this almost shot-for-shot recreation of In the Mouth of Madness? And In the Mouth of Madness, it's not one of the most popular John Carpenter movies. People do love it. It's got a cult following. But for this guy, this Oscar-winning director, to basically recreate this scene and this setting from John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness, that's fucking awesome. So, anyway, so on a technical level, this is top notch. The cinematographer is Dan Laustin, who shot the John Wick movies. He's become very popular now. He started out doing stuff like The Brotherhood of the Wolf and Silent Hill, and he's shot the last 5 or 6 Del Toro movies, and it looks magnificent. The score is by Nathan Johnson, who did Brick and Looper, and a couple of years ago he did Knives Out. It's a great score. And the production design, art direction and production design, Tamara Dendrel is the production. I mean, this is as beautiful looking a movie filled with incredible sets and costumes and things like that as you can possibly get. As I mentioned, Cate Blanchett, Toni Collette, Willem Dafoe, they're all great in the movie. But Bradley Cooper, again, having an amazing year. He plays John Peters in Paul Thomas Anderson's masterpiece, Licorice Pizza, and he all but steals that movie. He's only in it for 15 minutes, in a few scenes. It's a small part, but he manages to be one of the highlights of the film. And he's hilarious and awesome in Licorice Pizza, and he's fucking great in this movie as this lead character, this drifter who becomes a con man. Who is concerned about money, and there's always something going on in his head, and he's hiding these deep and very significant secrets that define his character that really are disturbing and quite dark. He's great in this movie. The arc that he goes on from the beginning to the end, the mysteries that he keeps inside him that slowly come out to the ending, which is really quite emotional. And really quite beautiful. The film also has an undercurrent message about alcoholism. As someone who has had to deal with alcoholism in my life personally, I found that to be very, very effective in what it was, in its portrayal of the use of alcohol and alcoholism and the secrets that go along with that, especially during that time period. The movie starts out in 1939, and it goes up through 1941, and into World War II. That's the period it takes. More people drank during that time, especially the people that populate this movie. Lots of drinking in the movie, but the consequences of drinking and the reasons behind, using alcohol are brought up in this movie, I think, beautifully, sensitively, and also really intelligently, and creepily and mysteriously. It's 2 hours and 20 minutes, and it goes by like that. There's a distinct difference in the first half of the movie from the second half of the movie. The first part being the low-down, carnival, carny sideshow stuff, and then the second half being the more high society, grifter things. But the tone never wavers, and the final 45 minutes of the movie with the events and the complications that unfold are devastating and really suspenseful, and I was just rocking in my seat at certain times with intensity, and so many scenes build up magnificently. Del Toro has a great grasp of this material. He clearly loves it. and I think it's the strongest thing he's made, tonally, in terms of story, in terms of style. I think it might be the best movie he's ever made. And again, though, I do want to make sure people know a lot of the keystones and a lot of the stuff that Del Toro is best known for is not in this movie. I mean, if you're looking for this crazy, Pan's Labyrinth, otherworld fantasy land filled with creatures and monsters, or if you're looking for an underwater creature that has sex with a woman, if you like his last movie, like the Shape of Water, I've always said that I think Del Toro was like, hey, listen, what if the main character actually had sex with E.T.? That's what it is. It's E.T. except that it's a sea creature and the main character bangs bangs E.T. So stuff like that. There's no giant monsters like Pacific Rim. There's really none of that stuff that everybody really embraces. The crazy fantasy elements, and Doug Jones is not in this movie, covered in latex, playing insane characters and creatures. None of that is in this movie, and it works, and it works better than almost every other movie he's made. And it proves that he doesn't really even need, the crazy fantasy creature monster shit. He can tell a great film noir story and do it with three-dimensional characters where you're actually emotionally invested. I was on the verge of tears during, especially the end of this movie. It's exciting, it's scary, it's interesting, it's beautifully performed. It's a wonder to watch. It's one of the best movies of the year. One of the very best movies of the year. I can't recommend Nightmare Alley highly enough. Now, it's rated R. There is violence in it. There's some nudity. But, this is stuff that Del Toro puts in all of his movies. I mean, he's had, extreme gore and violence in most of his movies. And so that's a part of this movie as well. And all of that stuff works better than anything that he's ever done before. All of those elements come together to become this magnificent tribute to film noir with great performances, a great story. Top to bottom, I loved it. I absolutely loved it, and I can't recommend Nightmare Alley highly enough. I've never read the book, the original book from 1946. I saw the movie a very, very, very long time ago, like when I was a kid. I kind of remember parts of it, but not all of it, and I'm definitely going back to get the original again, maybe this weekend, to watch it. So anyway, that's the deal. Hey, by the way, when I went to see the movie last night, took the Blue Line out to the Rosemont to see it. Jesus Christ, obviously this video is going to be watched probably, after this happens. Last night was like the windiest goddamn night ever. I actually, when I was waiting for the train on the way home after the movie, at the Rosemont stop, the Blue Line Rosemont stop, one of the Rosemont CTA signs at the stop was banging back and forth so hard it actually flew off and chucked across the platform. Didn't kill anybody, but my God. If you were out last night, I was wearing a baseball hat. I actually had to take out a stapler and staple it to my head. Anyway, I've never seen a CTA sign at a L stop. This is right on the Kennedy, where you're waiting for the L on the Kennedy. So obviously a very windy area, lots of cars going by and stuff. But my God, and on top of it, I mean, it was the windiest night ever last night. Anyway, I've never seen that. Has anybody ever seen that? Like a sign that it was bolted to a train, an L stop, flying? There were only about 10 of us on the platform because it was about 10:30 at night. But my God, anyway. I braved the elements to see it. I was almost murdered when I saw Nightmare Alley, and I still loved it. All right. More videos to come. Thanks a lot. Hold on to your hat.